Good luck.
Good luck, Rabbi. Your camera's a little bit light.
I wanted to share a few stories about Rabbi Pinyeh. Rabbi Pinyeh Korfel Shalom just passed away. Rabbi Pinyeh was a legendary mashpia, Hasidic mentor to thousands of people, and he really set the standard of what a mashpia, what a Hasidic mentor really is. Just share a few things about Rabbi Pinyeh. The level of self-effacement, of humility, is a different league than people know about. He's just in a different league. I'll give you an example. A friend of mine was walking in Kingston Avenue in Crown Heights with his son, and his son accidentally bumped into Rabbi Pinyeh. So his father says, "Say you're sorry." So Rabbi Pinyeh right away says, "I'm sorry." There's no sense, no yeshus, no sense of self at all. Rabbi Pinyeh knew my great grandfather, Rabbi Sol Nevler, and he said a few stories about him. He learned from him. He said that Rabbi Sol Nevler, he was arrested in Russia because his children didn't go to a communist school. And the purpose of the communist school and the purpose that the government forced everyone to go to the communist school wasn't so that they should learn secular studies. The goal was rather to tear out any vestige of faith in God. That was the reason why the communists insisted that everyone go to school. So when he was arrested, the KGB came to his wife, Rabbi Michla, his wife, and they said to her, "If you send your daughter to school, then we will release your husband from prison." So she immediately agrees, and they kept their word, and they took him out of prison. But right after he came out of prison, he sees his daughter preparing to go to school. He says, "Where are you going?" She says, "I'm going to school." "Why are you going to school?" So he said, she said, "Don't you know that the only reason they let you out of prison was was because I agreed to go to school, because mom said that I should go to school. That's why you're out of prison." So he said, "If that's the case, I'll go back to prison." And he stood up and he said, "I'm going back to prison." So the end was that she didn't go back to school and he didn't go to prison, Baruch Hashem. Neither of those calamities happened. But that's just something your opinion would share to give us some insight about how the physical world meant nothing to these Chassidim. They were not at all interested in the physical. To the extent the Friedrich Rebbe, the previous Rebbe, said that regarding going to school, he said, if they will tell you that they will throw you in fire if you send your children if you don't send your children to their schools, better you should go in fire than send the children to school. The emphasis of Rabbi Pinyeh's mentorship was for students in the yeshiva of Ten Chatfim, students in the Rebbe's yeshiva, and he always would speak to the students in the yeshiva about how they're meant to be in a higher standard because they were in that yeshiva, and also the graduates of that yeshiva are held to a higher standard. For example, as we're discussing the shabbos, it says in the Hayom Yom that anyone who went to the yeshiva of Ten Chatfim is meant to study an hour of chassidus every day. An opinion would say doesn't mean to someone who's currently attending the yeshiva. If you're currently attending the yeshiva, then when yeshiva first began in the city of Lubavitch, you studied chassidus for 4 hours a day. And if you're talking about studying the study of chassidus in America, was for 3 hours. It is for 3 hours a day. So the instruction of studying chassidus for every 1 hour a day, that's for everyone who was ever in that yeshiva. And I think it would really be an amazing thing, as we're discussing the Shabbos, for people to take this upon themselves. One story Pinyeh loved, and he repeated often, about this idea of the higher standard that is demanded of those who have the great merit of studying chassidus and studying the yeshiva, was a story about the vote for the rabbi in the shul in Moscow. There were two candidates for this position. One of them was a Chabad chassid. I think his name was Haimovich or something. And there was another gentleman who was not a chassid that was also contending for the position. And of course, the chassidim wanted their man to be in the position. But they heard an instruction came to the previous Rebbe that the person that everyone should vote for as a rabbi was the other man, not the Chabad chassid, which was very surprising. So Chaikel Chanan, he was a Chabad chassid, and he really wanted to know, what is this about? What does this mean? Who is this man? So he made a pretext of why he needed to spend some time in his house. I think the opinion said he suspected this rabbi of being a spy or something. I'm not sure what Chaikel was worried about, but either way, the pretext he said was that he came to town. He doesn't know whose home he's able to eat in, but he figures the rabbi of the town's food is kosher, and therefore he wants to eat in the rabbi's house because he knows where else to go. He figures, can you trust the rabbi's home that it's a kosher home? This was on a Friday, and the rabbi agrees, and he stayed in his house for Shabbos. Came Friday night. In Russia at that time, if you didn't work on Shabbos, it was sort of like a death sentence. There was no actual death sentence for breaking Shabbos, but working on Shabbos was necessary in order to get a card to get food, a bread card. If you did not want to work on Shabbos, so then the only work you could have is working for the government. You're not working for the government, you don't get a bread card, and therefore how are you going to survive? So the government, by making this the rule of everyone has to work for the government, or without that they can't get food, was really putting people's lives in danger unless they broke Shabbos. So many people needed to break Shabbos to stay alive. And it's technically kosher to, in various situations, to, first of all, if your life is in danger, you're allowed to break Shabbos. But besides that, there are various things you could do that will not be considered breaking Shabbos. And so this Chaikel Chanan, when he was staying at this rabbi's house for Shabbos, a man comes into the home of the rabbi and he says, I have a question. I want to keep Shabbos, but I want to stay alive as well. Can I accept a certain position? And he explained to the rabbi this position that he was offered, and he wants to know if this is okay, if he's allowed to keep this position, because it will make him break the Shabbos. So the rabbi said that there are various heterim, there are various loopholes in halacha, and if he does A and B, if he does a shinoi, he does various halachic acrobatic activities that would ensure that the transgression of Shabbos will be lightened, and therefore it will be considered allowable for him to take this position. Okay, the guy accepts this and he leaves. Then another man enters, and this man already had an idea of what he was going to do to support keeping Shabbos while accepting this working position on Shabbos. He had certain ideas of how he thought it would work. And all the ideas that he had, the Rav dismissed summarily. He didn't allow any of the various heterim, any of the various loopholes. And the guy leaves, he has no idea what he's supposed to do because the rabbi didn't really say anything he could do. It's all the ways he suggested weren't kosher, and I guess he wasn't able to take that job. And Chaikel asked the rabbi, why'd you do this? The first guy, you said you could, and the second guy, you said you can't. So the rabbis told Rabbi Chaikel, the second guy was a student in the yeshiva of Tenchot. Since he was a student in the yeshiva, there are different standards that Hashem wants of him. Some different standards are expected of him. Rabbi Pinyeh, I love the story because it highlights how this concept of holding yourself to a higher standard. If you had the merit of studying the teachings of chassidus, Rabbi Pinyeh himself, besides studying chassidus every day, but also I would encourage all the students to really spend time learning chassidus. And someone once asked him, "How long should you learn chassidus for?" He said there was a chassid he merited to meet, whose name was David Haradaker. David Haradaker was already an old time chassid from a long time ago, but he managed to meet him once, and he said, Reb David, when he would teach chassidus, he would stop when he got hungry. He didn't look at the clock. He was teach, but he would stop. But he got hungry. He said, "Okay, that's a time to stop." Interestingly, my great grandfather, Rabbi Nevler, he was in the audience of the previous Lavash Rebbe, and he told the Rebbe he has no time to learn chassidus because he's a sheichet. He has to do the shechita, and he has no time to study. So the previous Rebbe said to him. And then additionally, he lived in a time when there was a great hunger. People would come to him till late at night just to consult with him and to. So he asked the previous Rebbe, what should he do? So the previous Rebbe said, what time they stop coming? You say you advise people, there's a hunger, and you encourage people. What time they stop coming to your house? He says about midnight. So the previous Rebbe said, so then you should start learning chassidus at midnight. The first few hours, he said, will be hard. And afterwards, the next couple of hours will get a little bit easier. That's what he said. Then he said, you think you're supposed to learn chassidus when you're well rested and when you're well fed. You should learn chassidus specifically when you're not well rested and when you're not well fed. And Randall Futafas commented in the story, and he said, you see from the story how many hours he had to spend learning chassidus. He said the first few hours won't be so hard. Anyways, on that note, Pinyeh, famously, one of the most famous things people know about Pinyeh, maybe not the most important thing, but definitely one of the more famous things. There was a wedding, and all the students in the yeshiva attended the wedding because I guess it was one of the yeshiva students who had gotten married. And the next morning, I think it was a Friday morning, and nobody came to study chassidus that morning because everyone was tired from the wedding. So Pinyeh was the only one who came to the yeshiva. So the Rebbe walked into the study hall, and the Rebbe saw there's only one student there. The Rebbe said, are you the only child of Tinchat Vimim? You are the Ben Yochid, the only child of Tinchat Vimim? And in a way, Rabbi Pinyeh, not just himself being a Ben Yochid, an only child of Tinchat Vimim, but he had many, many children, many thousands of children, thousands of chassidim that he raised. In fact, I was last week. I was at the privilege of meeting an older chassid who was in the 70s, and I asked him if he has any memories of Rabbi Pinyeh, and he said he grew up in Newark, and he was a child, and he needed guidance, and Rabbi Pinyeh guided him. He said since he was a little child until he passed away, guiding him for decades and decades. And he paid attention. He was in tune with people around him and who needed the guidance, and he gave it. He was very, very generous with his time and with love and concern. You knew with your opinion you could reach out to him and he wouldn't judge you, and he would listen to you and give you guidance sincerely from the heart that for your benefit. So I think and it's amazing that he passed away on Parshas Pinchas. Parshas Pinchas was a time, unfortunately, he was beaten up because he taught chassidus. He was teaching chassidus in a neighborhood in New York. At the time, there was a lot of animosity from various sects of chassidim towards Lubavitch. They were very upset about what they felt was an infiltration in their turf, and they took Rabbi Pinyeh and they beat him up and they shaved his beard. And it happened to Parshas Pinchas. And the Rebbe said that this person that they did this to, his name is Pinchas. He acted like Pinchas. He went just like in this week's Torah portion. We read about how Pinchas just did the will of God, not making any calculations whatsoever. Similar way, Pinyeh did the same. He went to teach chassidus in Williamsburg, and he didn't make any calculations, and it didn't matter to him what would happen to him. Just he wanted to carry the torch and inspire these souls inspiring souls. And we got to keep on with the inspiration until Mashiach comes, inspiring other people to go on that route of learning chassidus and sharing chassidus until we see Mashiach Karam Mamish. A good Tavach, Psuras Tevis.